The hangar hums before dawn, a cold blue quiet, where machines sleep and dreams hide beneath tarps of dust and steel. Out there, beyond the flight line, the horizon bleeds into morning, the kind of sky that reminds people why they ever wanted to fly. Welcome to Hero Without a Name, where courage often wears grease-stained hands and speaks in silence. Today, we remember a woman whose uniform said maintenance crew, but whose heart carried the sky itself. 4 years, she stood in the shadows of roaring engines, patching the wings of other people's glory. No one noticed the way she looked at those jets, not like machines, but like promises. This is not just a story about flight. It's about the quiet ones who make others soar, until the day they finally take off themselves. In a dusty hangar on an overseas base, Corporal Ava Reynolds moved like she belonged to the rhythm of the machines. Her world was the scent of jet fuel, the metallic taste of sweat, and the hiss of pressurized lines. Her name, small and unspoken, sat at the bottom of a duty roster few ever read. She didn't crave recognition. She craved precision. Every bolt, every wire, every rivet carried her fingerprint. When pilots stepped into the cockpits she restored, she'd watch from a distance, a faint smudge on the glass reflection, as the engines she had tuned screamed into life. Each takeoff sent vibrations through the ground that reached her chest. It wasn't envy. It was something gentler and heavier. When the hangars emptied, when the floodlights dimmed, Ava stayed. She studied manuals cover to cover, every system, every flight protocol. Sometimes, she'd sneak into the simulator bay, long after everyone had left. The glow of the screens reflected in her eyes as she practiced emergency procedures she'd never been allowed to perform. She wasn't trying to prove anyone wrong. She was just waiting for the sky to call her name. Then one afternoon, the call came, not as an invitation, but as a crisis. It was a humid day, the kind that made uniforms cling and tempers short. A training squadron had been ordered into immediate readiness, an unexpected deployment drill. Engines roared to life up and down the tarmac, except one. A single jet refused to start. A hydraulic failure grounded it. The pilot, a young lieutenant barely out of training, panicked as the clock ticked down. The mission couldn't wait. Ava was already beneath the fuselage, sleeves rolled, a streak of oil across her cheek. Her voice stayed calm as chaos grew around her. "Pressure valves jammed," she muttered. "Give me 2 minutes." Command shouted for status updates. The pilot wiped sweat from his brow. And just as the engines whined to life, the lieutenant collapsed, heatstroke, exhaustion, gone before the takeoff order. For a heartbeat, the hangar froze. The jet was ready. The mission was live. But there was no pilot. Ava looked up from the panel. Her eyes met her supervisor's, a man used to barking, not believing. "I can fly it," she said. He laughed at first, then realized she wasn't joking. Nobody spoke as she climbed the ladder. Every step echoed. Every hand on the railing trembled just a little. And when she lowered the canopy and the engine roared again, something shifted in the air. She wasn't fixing someone else's dream anymore. She was living her own. The jet screamed off the runway, cutting through heat and disbelief. Inside the control tower, eyes widened. Her movements were smooth, deliberate, flawless. She handled the throttle like it was part of her heartbeat. She spoke on the radio with the composure of someone who'd been listening all her life, because she had. But the sky is never kind to first flights. Minutes in, the warning lights ignited. Fuel pressure drop. Leakage. She scanned the gauges, a slow hemorrhage from the left tank. If she didn't act, the plane would burn out, or worse, spiral into the base. "Control, I've got a leak," she reported. Command's voice crackled back. "Reynolds, eject." "That's an order." But her hands stayed on the stick. Her voice stayed calm. "If I leave her, she crashes. Too close to base." She cut the throttle, angled the nose up just enough to clear the perimeter. The jet began to shake, metal groaning, wings trembling. Dust clouds swirled below as she guided the aircraft over the barren desert beyond. For a moment, time dissolved. It was just her, the machine, and the sky that had waited too long to hold her. The landing was brutal, a violent kiss with the earth. The jet skidded, tore a line through the sand, and came to rest in a storm of smoke and silence. Then a figure emerged from the wreckage, limping, helmet under her arm, visor cracked. Ava Reynolds. Mechanic. Unauthorized pilot. Alive. The rescue crews reached her seconds later. And for the first time, the airmen who used to walk past her in silence saluted first. They called it the flight they never forgot. The investigation board spent weeks tangled in paperwork, unsure how to process what had happened. Regulations didn't have a checkbox for miracle. Ava wasn't punished, but she wasn't celebrated either. Her report was buried under Incident Response Protocol. Command didn't want attention. Heroism was inconvenient when it came without permission. Still, rumors spread through the base like wildfire. Mechanics whispered her name with pride. Pilots nodded quietly when she passed. Then one morning, a sealed envelope arrived on her workbench. Transfer orders. Not disciplinary. Pilot training program. She read it twice before believing. On her last day in the hangar, she walked down the line of jets, her silent companions for years. At the end stood the same aircraft she'd saved. She placed a hand on its battered nose cone, metal warm under her palm. "You were never broken," she whispered. "And neither was I." Outside, the runway shimmered beneath the sun, endless, open, waiting. In the world of uniforms and ranks, some heroes never make it to the headlines, because they're too busy holding everything together. Ava Reynolds didn't just fix planes, she fixed what people believed was possible. She showed that sometimes courage isn't loud, it's patient. It works in the shadows until the moment comes to rise. Here on Hero Without a Name, we remember the ones who don't chase glory. They build it, bolt by bolt, one unseen act at a time. Because sometimes, the quietest mechanic turns out to be the best pilot on the field. And when she finally took flight, she didn't just rise into the sky. She carried every unseen hero with her.